sky. To whom do these celestial steeds belong? When you appear to us like gods on high, what brings you here to mystify?
Hi, welcome to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. Returning today as our guest is the Tri-State's own Chris Holly. Chris is a writer who covers the paranormal world in her website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. On that site, her goal is to bring to light true events occurring in that paranormal world. It definitely contains some very original thinking and some very original philosophizing. Hi, Chris. Welcome back to the show. I've been looking forward to this interview. How have you been?
Oh, I've been fine, and thank you for having me.
Oh, I tell you, you have certainly sent some very interesting emails, and I understand that you've had a very busy summer. Lots of sightings, lots of orbs. Let me quote you in your blog, what the heck is going on up there?
That's a very good question. I was just ready to have a nice summer with my family and didn't anticipate any of this, but that was not going to be the case. I would say starting, right at the beginning of June, right through to July, August. It slowed down in September. Here we are in October, and it still hasn't completely stopped. I had one email or phone message or contact of one way or another of people on Long Island, basically on the South Shore, facing the Atlantic Ocean, seeing crafts, orbs, and lights they just could not understand. And these people were frightened, shaken, and did not know what to think of it. And either did I. In all these years of doing this, I never had as many at me every day. I would just have report after report, phone calls, Skype message left for me, voicemails of people seeing and encountering these, strange objects. The orbs were almost a daily occurrence, where someone said to me, I encountered this large, strange orb, and gave me, their report. And basically they were all seeing the same thing. They were seeing large orbs, not small ones, about the size, over and over, it was told to me, of a Volkswagen. So that's a big orb.
It is. It's not just some little thing that's flying around. And,
right.
that people pick up on photographs that are described as some sort of a flashback or a piece of dust on a lens or whatever. I mean, these are enormous, and they're visually sighted.
Absolutely. They usually were seen in a group, 2 to 3.
Okay.
They all would hover, maneuver, incredible, maneuvering where they would just go straight up or to hard right turn and never reduce their speed and things like that. They often would stop and hover over the people that were watching them as if to say, am I going to come down and do something to you, or am I going to continue? They were obviously observing them and then just take off again and either join the, other orbs. They were all out white. They would change to orange and red and go back to white. They all told me at one point or another it would dim out completely where they could see the outline of a dark circular object and then blink back on again. They described it as fluid or plasma-like in consistency, and they would take off always towards the ocean, unless, of course, they were coming in from the ocean. But that was the direction. And I had reports from people in parties, poor people out for a late-night swim in their pool, all standing there looking up at this thing over them. I mean, that has to be frightening. Right on, back side of a street, all kinds of, viewing was seen all over the island. Fire Island, people along the beach saw these things all summer long. The funny thing is, nobody knew about it. It was not in the media. It was not picked up. They all did try to call different authorities. Many of them were just embarrassed and didn't.
Well,
but it was also, met with the same thing. They were laughed at, and that was it.
Exactly. And yet, this is something that would, especially when it occurs so frequently, you would think that someone would be out there collecting data, because if UFOs come and go so quickly that you just don't get enough of a chance to do anything. But if these are occurring with that frequency, I mean, there should have been some physicist somewhere out there with some detecting instrument of some nature, you would think.
Well, you would have thought that for the last, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And it's just something that doesn't take place. That's why I started to write about it. Then I would just constantly write about it.
Yeah.
There has to be a group. This is a perfect opportunity for you. If you are calling yourself an investigator, all you got to do is set up somewhere over the ocean and just keep filming or watching it or staking it out. And someone's got to catch one of these. But that doesn't happen.
Well, we had a question come in from Dave, and he was wondering if there was any mainstream media coverage of all these sightings on Long Island.
No.
None, huh? I mean, what about like Dan's paper or something of that nature? Because he'll cover sort of freaky things, not necessarily news. Do you know of any reports there?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
And I think when they went in on the Internet and did Google Long Island UFOs, I came up. And that's why I was the one that everyone received, they sent their reports to me. Also, I am known, I protect these people. I will not humiliate them or bring people to their front yard, and, I won't hurt them. Never, won't happen, not for me. And they then spill their guts, and believe me, they were frightened. These people were next to tears when I would talk to them on the phone. These things really upset them. And, of course, many of them were skeptics, never believed in any of this. So having this experience really was, a soul-shaking event for them. It's
and yet you wonder why. I mean, people do see strange things from time to time, and obviously people in that area there for the summer have seen strange things, I'm sure, in their life, knowing Long Island the way we both do. And why would something like a light in the sky be so terrifying? Not frightening. I mean, frightening would be like a thunderstorm with a lot of lightning. This is actually terrifying, as if there's a certain sense of something alien there, whether it's from another planet or whatever, but certainly, let me put it another way, certainly something non-human there. And that, I think that is why people are so terrified by these things. And you put it in a different way, too. You say it's an intelligence that's cold and is an observer and has no real interest in the being that they're observing. And I think people pick this up.
Oh, absolutely, without question. And they also know they're outgunned.
Yeah.
No matter what, they're just outgunned. There's absolutely nothing you can do against something like that. If you're standing alone out in the night, looking up without a weapon or even a bat to try to protect yourself with, you are at their mercy. And that's a terrifying experience, especially when it's a complete unknown. You do not know if it's hostile or not, and it's looking at you. That's not a place you want to be.
No, and there's enough mainstream coverage in the media or the entertainment media where I think abductions are something that a lot of people are familiar with, and a lot of people would prefer not having happen to them. So I guess that would be scary, too. But it's interesting. You're not the only one that's reported this huge upswing in sightings. George Filer has, Peter Davenport has, and I don't know about MUFON. I don't know if they've been reporting a large increase, but certainly those other two gentlemen have. And I wonder if, do you have any feeling like that maybe something's starting to happen, and that's why we're seeing so much more?
I don't know if it's increased or we are just becoming more aware and starting to realize I really don't think that light belongs there, and actually focusing on it until it's in your face and say, oh, I know that light is not supposed to be there. I'm not sure. Personally, I think they've always been here. I also feel maybe they are letting down their shield a little bit and not caring if we see them as much as they used to. I know in the Pacific Ocean there's an enormous amount of reports going on, also of orbs. And of course that I don't know what's going on. I can only read what I'm reading on the internet and listening to what I'm listening on the coast-to-coast type shows about this situation off of San Francisco, I believe, where they have the armies of, China, South Korea, Russia, and the United States all together, supposedly guarding what they believe is a large craft on the bottom of the ocean. Now, that's not mainstream media, but it's enough people talking about it, saying they've seen it. The whole situation came out of a veterans group, and you have to say to yourself, what's going on? And if this is this serious, how long are they going to be able to hide it? So, I have given up long ago trying to make any logic out of how we deal with this subject. To me, that's as big a mystery as the actual subject of UFOs. Our whole interaction as a species with this subject is, in my view, insane. They are there. We've seen them from the beginning of mankind. They have always been here, yet we refuse to deal with it. We don't even like to think about it. That's so illogical.
Especially if you're in your pool and it's the middle of the night and there's a big orange orb hanging over your head. Yep.
Yes,
I would not want to think
the size of a car.
Okay, I'll pass on that experience too. Kate Valentine here. I'm speaking to Chris Holly. We're on 1160 WVNJ. Both Chris and I would love to hear from you if you've had experiences, if you've seen some orbs this summer, and what you think about all this. So you can post your thoughts now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. After the show, you can find out a lot more about Chris and her sightings and her experiences on her website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. Be right back. Hope to hear from you then. Hi, welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show. Our guest today is Chris Holly. You can find out much more about orbs and many other paranormal things on her website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. You can post a comment or an opinion right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Chris, just before the break, we were talking about the huge increase in orbs and this summer, the sightings of them, and we had two questions come in. Adele was wondering how long people observe these orbs, and Ballas was wondering, isn't it usual for activity to increase before, during, and after large natural disasters? So I was wondering if you could comment on those. How long do people see these orbs for, roughly? I mean, obviously you don't know exactly.
Well, anywhere from, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes, because they were able to watch them move across the sky, stop, make a few maneuvers, and then head out towards the ocean, to up to about 10 or 15 minutes, which was a horrifying event for that group of young men I spoke about that were standing talking to each other in a parking lot. This orb took and circled them for quite a while and then hovered right above them, and they were paralyzed in fear, and it just observed them, I guess, deciding what it was going to do with them. And I think the only reason they were saved was because they were only, I don't know, a half a block away from a very busy main street where a lot of people were, at the time. So anywhere from, I would say, let's say 3 minutes to 20 minutes. And that, to me, is a long time. This isn't like a few seconds.
Right. It isn't like sometimes people will see a bright light in the sky, it'll go whoosh, and you'll never, you just don't know what it was. I mean, it's just not possible. What Bayless was saying, isn't it usual for activity to increase before, during, and after large natural disasters? It is, but I think it's a different type of occurrence, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I think they're different types of orbs. I don't think all orbs are one and the same. I think they come from and are used for many different types of activities. These, I don't think, we didn't have natural disasters the whole entire summer, and these sightings started end of May, and I had the last one about 4 days ago. So, that's a very hard question. I'm sure there are some orbs that's the case. In this particular situation, I do not think it's the case.
I have to agree with you on that. The other thing, too, is it's interesting that it's all sort of ocean-related or water-related. There's so much talk about underwater bases for these unidentified objects. And it seems as if that's where they're coming and going from.
Well, I was never too bent towards that thinking. I sure am now. I truly believe that that's where these things go to and come from. It has to be. Why are they just so constantly going in that, one direction, in or to or from the ocean? So it has to be where they're able to disappear, or possibly there's some type of entry or dimensional thing there or something that they use to come and go. Well, but it's definitely tied to the ocean.
You figured this water covers 3/4 of the globe. So,
right.
And nobody goes down deep to speak of. And so it'd be perfect hiding place.
Absolutely. And you don't have to go too far out before there's no one around to view you entering or exiting the ocean.
Exactly.
So, it's a perfect place. And let's be honest, if these things cannot, or our atmosphere is not paramount to them, is meaning they don't have to come out and walk around and be in our atmosphere. Doesn't matter to them if they're above the ocean or below it. It doesn't matter to them. So it's a perfect place for them to hide.
Well, the other thing, too, is a long time ago we had a very interesting question that came in on another guest. And what that person asked was that since, as you mentioned, these things seem to have been around since the days of the cavemen, wouldn't they have improved their craft since then? Shouldn't there have been like an updating of their models? And it seems with the orbs, almost as if the discs are like somewhat passé, and now they're flying in a different type of vehicle.
Well, I think they always updated. I think if you really went in and looked at the reports and the sightings over the years, they went from that typical flying saucer shape, which you rarely ever hear anyone talk about anymore, to big cigars, actual building-size crafts, lots of orbs, all different things. Things with all kinds of arms sticking out from them, just completely different. So I think they went from their Model T to what they're using now, without question. And I think the sizes also, changed. I think they have super large crafts where they then discharge these smaller type crafts or objects from, where in the past it may have been, what they traveled in, they also were seen in. So I think it has changed drastically.
Well, it would seem so. Also, I want to bring up for our audience, too, you give a very good tip as to if you sight an orb, how to call it in. And that is to report unusual aircraft activity to the police, and maybe you will get a police witness that way.
Yeah, that's right, but that's very important, and we need to talk about that.
Okay.
What to do if this happens to you. Number one, you don't go out and offer yourself up.
Okay.
You never just stand there with your jaw open looking. I know that's what's going to happen to you because it's so stunning. But this is a time in your life. You need to pull from your insides and focus because it could mean the very welfare of you and your family. What you need to do is immediately, if you see something you do not recognize, is one, get away from being in a dark place, immediately find other people. If there are lights to be turned on, turn them all on. Lock yourself in and call the police. But call the police and say this: are you having police activity in my area? Because often they send out helicopters with big searchlights,
right,
and so forth and so on. That's what you say to them, because there appears to be police activity right over my area. They will then most likely dispatch a car, and that might get you a police witness to what you're seeing. And do not use the word UFO, strange lights, anything like that. Ask them if it's police activity.
That's
that
actually,
they respond to.
That's an excellent tip. That really is, because if you call the police station, you tell them there's a UFO over your house, you're going to be marked for all eternity in that particular police station. That's for sure.
Absolutely, but they will get their feathers riled if they think a helicopter is flying around in their territory with a searchlight, and they will be right on it. So that's what you need to do, and that will also get you the protection you need.
Yeah. But, it is interesting that no one has investigated this. And as excellent point that you bring up, that, what is actually putting the damper on this? There comes a point where, just like reporting it as police activity, I think what Bayless is saying, the increase in these, as he said, tsunamis, floods, earthquakes around the world, some young graduate student could say, look, there are orbs, and sure, some people think they're UFOs, but I think they're a phenomena related to these natural events, and so I'm going to investigate it under those criteria, and perhaps then they would be able to get a grant or be able to do something about it. As you said, sort of suggest investigating it from a different angle.
Absolutely. Not to mention that we know nothing about, much of anything, to be honest. We really don't know much about the universe in which we float. We're just now starting to get a grasp, and every time we think we know something, it turns out, that's not so. So we're really completely without much knowledge at all about what's going on in our own universe, much less go after dimensions or time or things like that we just can't grasp. We just are not able to do it. These things could be all parts of that, or something that we just don't understand at all, haven't even gone past our radar yet. There could be things that are so unusual that are true and happen and part of the natural makeup of everything, but we just haven't gotten there yet. So I don't know what these things are. I just know they're there. And I'm very curious. I'd love to get a handle on what they are. And I cannot understand why anyone who claims they are, a scientist does not feel the same way. I can't get it.
Well, it does. You have to say, though, it has been up until now a career killer. If someone wanted to get grants and they say, I wanted to study UFOs, look what happened to John Mack, and he was an extremely respected psychiatrist, and he was working at Harvard, and he almost lost his position. And all he was doing was not investigating aliens. He was investigating people that claimed they were abducted, and which would a very legitimate investigation. And my gosh, what the man went through. So,
that's, as I said, that's one of our biggest mysteries, why we behave that way.
And who sort of keeps forcing that attitude upon the general public, too? Because it has been around since the 1940s. You mentioned UFO, and people giggle. We all know about the giggle factor, and it's still very, very potent. It's I don't know who's doing it or why they're doing it. I guess that's as big a mystery as the UFOs themselves.
Well, it also is a very, very easy way to keep this without answers needed. As long as this is kept a funny type of subject, and we make funny movies about it or scary movies about it, and laugh at everybody that discusses it. Not to mention, and I'm sorry to say this, bring in lots of people that are not too well balanced, that make up amazing stories to get attention or whatever their agenda might be. And this pollution, known as the paranormal, is impossible to negotiate. And that's all that was needed to not have to answer questions, to not have to share with the public what possibly others might know. It keeps us at arm's length, and we do it for them naturally and easily because we've been trained to, and we are now sitting in a puddle of ignorance about many subjects, and the only one that's benefiting from it are those who actually do know what's going on.
Sometimes I wonder if there is anyone that does know, too, but we're going to get back to that right after a short break. Kate Valentine speaking to Chris Holly. We're on 1160 WVNJ. Both Chris and I would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear if you've had sightings or if you have any thoughts on any of this at all. Post them now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. After the show, you can find out so much more on Chris's website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. We'll be right back after a short break. Hope to hear from you then. The Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. Our guest today is Chris Holly. She is the writer behind Chris Holly's Paranormal World. You can post a comment now on any of this on our website, Atlantic Coast UFOs. Is certainly after the show you can go to Chris's site, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. Chris, just before the break, we were talking about how some people that may or may not be in the know keep the rest of us in the dark. And you had a really interesting title for one of your blogs that would sort of address this issue, and you said it's time to face the times in which we live. And I think that's really a very good comment, because I think times are starting to change.
Oh, without question, I think times are starting to change. I think we're getting closer to many events that have been due and were going to happen, one way or the other, because their cycles are coming around. And I think with that comes an increase in all these other things that we consider paranormal, orbs, sightings, and it also may be one of the reasons that they're not as careful about being seen, because maybe there's so much to be done right now, or so many things that are going to occur. Let's face it, the sun is probably going to, not probably, the sun is going to give us terrible problems. So far, we've been extremely lucky. However, coming at us, I don't know. I don't think we're all going to be wiped out in a day. I don't believe that at all. But I do think we're going to suffer enormous damage to our energy grids, our satellites, our communications. We're going to be thrown back 200 years in different parts of this world, if not the entire world, and it's going to be a big problem. Among other things that are due to happen, Yellowstone is ready to blow. We do know the poles are starting well into their shift. We have volcanoes and tornadoes and everything else you can think of due to come and hit us hard. We somehow think that if we ignore it, it's not going to happen, but it is. And with that comes a turn or a change in everything else. And I do think that the people that are fully aware of what's going to happen to us are doing what they do and not really considering the world's population, because there's probably little they can do about it.
Well, that may be so, too. But again, that addresses back to the issue of Bayless's, that he says that there is a lot of unusual weather and climate changes and geological changes. And, possibly they are just here observing and just watching us run around like little ants while all this stuff's going on around us. That's sort of not a pleasant picture.
And also they may be quite amazed how, for 20 years, scientists have been telling us that these things are all going to happen. And as I said, we ignore it. We're not doing much to get ready for it. And that may be of interest. They may be, just going to be observers to how we deal with it and how many of us survive and don't survive. I mean, there's so many questions and not enough answers. All I know is it's happening. They're there. They're watching. We're going into some very tough times. I call it the era of the 2000 teens. I think the teens of the 2000s are going to be tough on the face of this earth, just because it's time for these things to happen. Well, and they happened before, they're going to happen again. So, it could be 2035 or 2015, or I don't, know that. I do know that cycle in the earth for these things to occur is here.
Which also makes you think that maybe if there is an underwater base, it's possible that these are not sentient beings from another planet, but actually from this Earth, and are just seeing how things are going on up here and how much it's going to affect them underwater, which actually they're really, if you're really down deep in the depths of the oceans, geological upheavals shouldn't affect you that much.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Or it could just be an advanced group of humans that somehow, maybe after World War II or something, jumped 100 years ahead of the rest of us in some type of group. I mean, there's all kinds of things. If you can think of it, it's probably a possibility.
Yeah.
And they have gone underwater. They are protecting themselves. They may have a small civilization apart from us, and they will survive. But I don't know the answers to this, and since we don't look, how could we know?
Yeah, and it seems like we're prohibited from looking by, as you said, the giggle factor. So I guess that's sort of up in the air. Well, but then also there seems to be, as you mentioned, and I'll get back to your blogs about real-time abductees. These people seem to have some information too, but again, it's being ignored.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was, I'm not going to say by who, but I was approached once by someone that I know has the ability to work with these abductees and find out a lot more than we know today. And because I would not just give up their identities, addresses, telephone numbers, and walk away and wanted to protect them, I was shunned, and they were shunned. And I said, fine, I know where you're coming from, but you are not going to hurt these people. They've already been badly hurt, and they're all very smart, and they know your game, and it's not going to work between us. So, unfortunately, they are all products of these abductions. They are all different than the rest of us. And it just sits there. It's just enormous wealth of material lost. Yeah. Data that should be collected, no one wants to know. And the people that should be dealing with it, oh my God, as you said, it's a career killer. Yeah. It's an embarrassment. They don't believe it. They can't go there because the gang they hang with doesn't want to, so it's just lost. Yeah. And these people struggle alone.
Well, just for the benefit of our audience too, what do you define as a real-time abductee?
A real-time, I think there's lots of abductions, and they're done by different groups for different reasons, or maybe even the same groups, but for different reasons. I think a lot of people that go missing and maybe are eaten, become a little ham sandwich. I'm not sure, but I would not doubt it. I think others are just taken, and it's too much trouble to return them. Really? So I don't know what happens to them.
They may
and
die
I know
of heart
that there's a group.
Too. Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, I know there's a group, the real-time abductees, that have been taken over their lifetimes because of something that's genetically different about them, and taken and returned and taken and returned over their lifetimes. Real-time abductees are people that want nothing to do with this, number one. Number two, that are going about their daily business, doing the regular routines of their life when an abduction starts, when either they see an object or a being or a ray of light or are surrounded in light, and the next thing they know, they're gone. When they are returned, they're usually returned in a different spot, sometimes close to where they were taken, other times miles away. And they are returned sick, harmed, vomiting, with fevers, rashes, burns, and physical harm. They then have to get themselves back home and recover. This happens to them over and over in their lifetimes. They have little or no memory of the lost time. That's another thing. The lost time averages right around the 3-hour mark each time. Sometimes less, sometimes a lot more. But basically for 3 hours of their life, their daily routine is stopped. They are taken. They don't know what happened to them. They have flash memory of some of it, and then they were put back in a place that they've never been before and have to get home. This goes on and on and on from usually childhood to the last abductee. She thought it was finally over in her life, 74 years old, and she was taken again.
Wow.
She was taken with her husband as he was there, poor man, and their little dog, and the little dog didn't transport well, I would say, because it died. It was killed.
Oh.
Returned, and the little dog was dead with them. So, and that's not the first time. I've had other cases. The dogs don't travel well with this. They all end up sick and dead. So,
but
that's what a real-time abductee is.
And do they ever undergo hypnosis to see if they can remember, or do they just not want to know?
Well, if you said that to a real-time abductee, it's like saying to them, I would like to kill you on the spot. I have a gun at your head. Are you ready?
Really?
Not one real-time abductee I've ever spoken to. The major concern is some human nitwit would try to hypnotize them. And the reason for that is no human knows what these beings have done to these people. I will tell you, their IQ points increased. They have psychic ability to some point or some kind of style. They are different mentally. Their personalities are changed, and they do not want anyone to go in there where they have no idea what was done to their minds and mess around. What if they brought back the whole horror of it? What if they wiped out their mind completely? What if they took and made them idiots by trying to hypnotize them? Any abductee that's had this done to them would never let a mere human without the type of skill they would need to hypnotize them. Because the little they have left of control over their own lives is their minds. And they cannot ever risk anybody hurting them.
Well, certainly back to the famous Betty and Barney Hill episode where they had no prior, description of other abductions, and they really weren't looking to see if they were abducted. They were just looking in to see why they were having nightmares. So they went for help to relieve the nightmares, and it seems that in this case the gentleman that did hypnotize them was very experienced in post-traumatic stress disorders, so possibly that saved them. But again, I'm wondering if perhaps that also has evolved over the decades, where there wasn't a strong enough prohibition against hypnosis put in, that Betty and Barney Hill were allowed to remember something, whereas more future abductees would not be allowed. I don't know.
I don't think that has anything to do with it at all. I don't think Betty and Barney Hill were abducted by the same type of creatures that take these people now today and do this, because I don't think Barney or Betty Hill had an IQ jump of like 40 points. And I don't think that they became genius on some level in some field after their abduction. And I don't think that they were harmed physically as much as these people. And I don't think they were all both Rh negative, Irish background, light eyes, typical thing. Yeah. There's definitely a biological component to what a real-time abductee is. Oh. They want something about this biology and these people in particular. So I think that happening years ago was a whole different thing. See, this, without question in my mind, all kinds of groups of things taking and messing with us. But the poor real-time abductees are the ones that are the big experiment, in my opinion.
Well, they certainly were not what you would describe as real-time abductees, so it makes sense. We're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, I want to talk to you about that genetic marker. Kate Valentine speaking to Chris Holly at 1160 WVNJ. We'd both love to hear about your thoughts. Post them now at AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. For a lot more information along these lines, please go to Chris's website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. We'll be right back.
If you missed part of today's program or you'd like to hear it again, be sure to subscribe to the Kate Valentine UFO Show podcast. Go to Kate's website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com, and sign up by entering your email address on the homepage. Every week the show will be delivered right to you, so you'll never miss another intriguing, thought-provoking interview with the top names in the UFO field. Sign up today for the Kate Valentine UFO Show podcast at AtlanticCoastUFOs.com.
Hi, welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. We're speaking to Chris Holly. She is the author of a phenomenal website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. If you have any thoughts or questions, you can post them now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Chris, just before we get into the genetic markers, we had two questions that came in. Dave was wondering where does Long Island rank in terms of UFO sightings and activity? It seems like there is more well-documented activity in the Southwest around Arizona and New Mexico.
I have no clue to that question.
Okay.
And I also think that Long Island people are odd. I think that they have been seeing these things in the sky from the beginning of when we settled here, and a little bit nonchalant on one hand, and on the other hand, not even going to bother because they're New Yorkers.
Yeah.
They know what's going to happen if they try to report this. I think it's only now that it's getting so serious that they found someone to target. Yeah. And they are sending them to me. Yeah. They are not interested, and I hate to say this, they are not interested in some of the big groups because they have in the past, or before finding me, did try to report it, and it was just lost, nothing. It went nowhere. So they then would come to me, and they have nothing but harsh words for the reporting sites, which is a major problem. We need a serious, connected, somehow professional place to do this, and it's not out there. But I can't answer that question.
Yeah, well, don't forget too, the skies are a lot darker out there too. And then Dale wrote in and he said he's not sure that he understands what you mean by real-time abductee. What is the main difference from being abducted? Is it the IQ increase, and then maybe we could get into the genetic markers, the Rh negative, and so on. Okay,
real-time means during their real-time life they are taken and turned back. It's not under hypnotism. It's not when they were sleeping. These beings didn't come through the closet door. These were people out doing their regular routine, fully awake, fully into, taking out the garbage or, working on a project or whatever they were doing, dealing with their car or whatever, when this happens. So that's real time, meaning it happens in real time, fully awake, fully knowing what's going on around them, and, of course, unable to do anything about it.
Right.
That's what real time. And as far as their differences, these people started out average people and end up very, very different, very bright, very, very successful, which is one of the reasons they were able to keep themselves alive, because they were able to do and take security measures to try to stop these occurrences from happening. But
but you do find some genetic markers, or I know Thomas Reed was on, and he felt that it's generational, and he was beginning to investigate the Rh negative factor in the blood.
Well, I can only tell you that I started out with 20 real-time abductees, and 8 dropped out. They were too afraid to go along with what we were doing, which was decided to form a group and together try to figure out what was going on for our own benefit. And 8 people, as I said, they were too afraid for their families and for their own benefit and dropped out. We were left with 12 that quickly went down to ending up with, I think I had 5 at the end. And a lot of that was just they lived in different parts of the country and were in the world and just couldn't get together. We were physically together in a group. And when the group was together, the sensation, overwhelming sensation, came to all in the group that we should allow me to write about it, because the feeling is that many more are about to go through the same thing, and more people are going to suffer these real-time abductions. And in order to try to help them survive it and handle it and maybe even prevent it, we should try to speak up. And that's when I started writing about it.
But then you stopped, and why was that?
Well, the end of the summer came, and we couldn't physically get together. Also, at the end of the summer, after being together time after time, it started to get a little weird, and like a beehive effect started to take place with the thinking, and the thinking started to get a little strange and uncomfortable for everyone, and we felt it best that the group disband, because we didn't know where it was going or what was going to happen. And fortunately, everyone was smart enough to know we were not going to do the work of others for them by being combined and maybe used. So that ended it for a while. But I do have contact with them one-on-one.
Because I do have the feeling that you parted as friends, certainly. But
very close friends.
I'm sure. I'm going to quote from your blog site, and it's according to that line, the abductee group felt more like one mind forming with parts made up from each member, but working as one. It was not normal. It was frightening. It also answered questions we all had in the group to the depths of how much we had been altered. The strange one-mind thinking was not something we thought should continue. It was not something the abductees felt comfortable with or wanted to increase. It was decided this was one road we did not want to travel. It's interesting. You almost feel like someone might have been in control of your group.
Well, actually, that's a possibility. And we were aware of that.
Yeah.
That's why we did what we did. We talked to each other one-on-one, but that one group thing, it was getting really very uncomfortable. And it needed to stop, because I was not going to be, as well as all these other people. They don't want to be used as a tool.
Right.
I'm not going to do somebody else's bidding. And I also want to say that everyone I've ever spoke to of people I consider to be believable real-time abductees, every single one of them felt that there was a human component to what was going on.
Wow, really?
Yep, that we felt there were humans there, involved, connected to what was happening with us.
That's not a good thought. That almost feels like, okay, well, you have to use the word conspiracy, but yeah, like alien-human conspiracy?
Well, I think it's pretty silly to think that there isn't some type of human consideration with the aliens. And I don't know why that, well, I do know why. There's no way you can say no to an alien civilization that's maybe a few million years older than us. You can say one thing, yes.
Yeah, that's true.
So that would be it. And if they want to take, I mean, it's obvious they're taking people all over the world constantly. And the only thing you can do is say yes, and possibly the best thing to do would be to be able to monitor it and go along with it, so at least you have a handle on what they're doing. They also may need the humans to deal with us on some level once we're taken. I don't know. It's possibly that they are so horrifying or not in a physical form enough and need humans to assist them. I'm not sure of any of this. That's just speculation. But every one of them, one of the real-time abductees, sensed a human presence along with a non-human presence. And that's very interesting. As far as the mark is, Rh negative blood is big time. Everybody's got it.
Wow.
Everyone in the group is Rh negative. There is only one person that does not have light-colored eyes, and they have light hazel-colored eyes.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, after this discussion, I am glad that I'm Rh positive with brown eyes. So it really sounds scary, Chris, and
I'm glad for you too. I really am, Jane.
Well, unfortunately, we came to the end of the hour. I wish we could go on for several more hours. It seems like it's just warming up to something very, very interesting. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And
I appreciate you having me. I like to get the word out.
Yeah.
It may help someone someday, and that's all you can ask for.
And if you need advice, or if you want to just share your experiences, go to Chris's website, Chris Holly's Paranormal World. So thanks again, Chris. As always, sincere thanks to both Bill and Dave. Thanks to our sponsors. Mostly thank you, the audience. You can hear the show again Sunday at 4. Much better yet, you can still subscribe to our free podcast and now YouTube as well. Have a great weekend. We're going to see you next Friday at 1. Our guest will be Frank Ficino to tell us all about his revised edition of the Braxton County Monster and why that revision was necessary. So until next Friday, remember, keep your eye on the sky, and if you see an orb, report it to the police. See you next week.